Hey everyone, I'm Adam,
And I'm Misaki.
and we're at Keyworks. And this is week 2 of our journey creating a game, 3 games in 3 months, actually. First game is Cosmo Leap, and if you didn't join us for the first episode, please check for it. We'll link to it in the comments below. This week, we're focusing on the environment, and we're super excited, as we said at the end of last week's video, to show this to you guys. We are going to talk about a lot of different things this week, about some more modeling, some different effects like black holes, wormholes. We're super excited. They look really cool. We shared a few on social media on our Twitter feed, so if you're not on that feed, please check it out. Follow us so you can get the latest updates as the week goes on. We're also going to be talking about music creation. We've laid down some ambient audio tracks. So without further ado, let's get started. First thing we would like to show you guys is how we created a platform. And this platform is very important for the game because this is where you start your journey as a spaceman.
For the platforms, again, similar to when we started out with Cosmo Leap, did a few drawings to get kind of the general idea of what we wanted to do. Then we took the idea into Blender. Also with the platforms, we didn't want the same platform getting repeated time and time again. So we wanted to be able to have some sort of variability in some of the things that are on there. So with a satellite dish or some fuel tanks and oxygen tanks, put a little computer console in there and some lights as well. The idea is, we could swap these items around and move them around the platform so there's some variability with the progression of the game. We didn't want it to get lost within the environment of the game. Wanted to have some things stand out, and as we'll see later on, we really made it pop with a little more lighting elements to make it stand out, so that the player knows that they need to get there.
So once we had settled on the platform and got that in the game, we needed to create content for what was going on with celestial objects such as planets. We worked really hard on how can we create unique looking worlds that weren't cookie cutter, that wouldn't take us a ton of time because it's just the two of us on a lot of art assets. So obviously, like a lot of other indie developers, we went with procedural generation, and there's a lot of options online. A lot of people have done some amazing stuff with procedural generation, and we couldn't go too crazy because we have 3 months to do 3 games. So we effectively had just a little bit of time to do one approach. We worked really hard on trying to nail it. We added a lot of various aspects to the procedural planet generation, not just the world itself, but also what's orbiting the world or the environment around that world, different types of worlds it could be, whether they're rocky planets or gaseous planets.
We started out with the cube sphere and used various bits of noise to be able to change the elevation, create some crevices and things like that. Also, later on, went in with the shader graph to have different colors based on the coordinates of each of those vertices. So we could have mountains with white snow tips, and valleys were oceans with blue, and kind of the in-between was either brown for the mountains that were coming out, or green for the grass around those mountains.
And we added things like rings around the planets would happen almost randomly depending on some variables, and also moons orbiting planet, and those orbits are procedurally generated as well. So you'll have very wild orbits sometimes, perhaps some that aren't as realistic or ones we found examples of in our universe, but this isn't our universe. This is our world. So, we felt comfortable just going for it and letting it run wild and not putting too many restrictions in there. So you'll see some really wild orbits, which is fun and exciting. We also added clouds that orbit your planet sometimes if it's a rocky world. The clouds are pretty neat. It's a little bit of a cloud-based system that has a density setting that we're able to control. We're also able to control the direction and the speed at which the clouds are moving. So it gives it a very interesting look. It's unique in a way, we feel, adds to the environment rather than doing some sort of misty particle system. These are actual 3D meshes as clouds that are low poly moving around, which we think is really neat looking, especially when they reflect, with some of the lighting adjustments, we reflect the light off of a nearby star.
We also created some gas planets using some handmade textures and materials, but they don't quite look right just yet. So we're going to continue to tweak that so we can make sure that it fits better within our universe and our style of the game.
They look pretty neat as is, but you're right. They don't quite fit the vibe, the look and feel of everything else that we have in the environment. So they do need a little bit of tweaking. Once we had planets, we felt pretty fairly nailed down. We moved on to a black hole and some other celestial objects. Black holes are super fascinating, I find. There are so many different ideas of what scientists have and artists in movies have thought they might look like. It wasn't until we got a picture not too long ago of what one might look like, what actually with our telescopes have picked up. We didn't want to, like, it's still fuzzy. And we didn't want to recreate what's very famously in Interstellar, the movie, because that's such an obvious one, and we didn't want to just copy what was there. But we did some research on a lot of different types of black holes, and one that I'm particularly fond of is what we wound up putting in the game, which has a black sphere in the center and a jets shooting out of the top and the bottom with a sort of a circling cloud. And what we're able to do with this is customize pretty heavily the size of the clouds, the size of the jets, the colors of both, speed at which it's rotating, so that we could really create unique looking black holes throughout our universe as you progress through the game. Now, these black holes, like planets as well and a lot of other celestial objects, they have gravity, and that's a key component to our game, which we'll talk about when we get to a little bit later in this series. The next thing we looked at after black holes was a star, and the stars are very important to the game. They have a lot of gravity, so you can really use them to help you get around the level and get to that next platform. And sometimes they'll be in your way, and you're going to have to figure out how to get around them and avoid them. And so the way we created the stars, which we're super happy about, it's actually one of my favorite celestial objects that we've created for the game so far, is there's a base sphere, which has an emissive color on the inside. And then we've created a particle system, two particle systems, actually. One that is very large particles that are aligned to the outside, so they kind of create a round shape and a spherical shape. We gave them some color, and they fade in and out. And we used another particle system for the corona, and we really, really like the effect it gives. And we have full control over the colors, the size of these stars, and of course, with some of the procedural settings that we're able to do in this game, we can adjust the size of any of these celestial objects. We can also adjust the mass of these objects, which impacts the gravity in our gravity system, so that as the player, as a spaceman flying through space, you're going to get sucked into some of these things pretty quickly, and you have to be very careful how you plan to get through these levels. So that was pretty exciting to see those stars.
So the music for really any game, especially one that you really want to take the time to develop the environment, is really critical. For this game, we wanted something that was more relaxing, was more ambient. And whenever I think of ambient music, one of the first artists that come to mind is Brian Eno, who's kind of the king of ambient synth music, and thought that something of that kind of nature would fit really well. So went into my trusty old DAW Cubase, which is an older version, so please don't shame me in the comments below. And fired that up, and a great virtual synth that I love to use for kind of sonic scapes and ambient kind of music is Absinthe. It's this Native Instruments plugin, and there's a whole lot you could do in terms of layering sounds and creating triggers and things like that will really modify the whole soundscape over time. So definitely relied really heavily on that plugin throughout the music creation. What makes a lot of these other challenging games work is to have calming graphics with calming music, and that kind of environment really helps put the player in the zone and keeps them going, keeps them moving forward.
And that's it for this episode. Next week, we're going to talk about gameplay, which is critical for any fun game, and the procedural level generation, how we're generating all these various environments and scenes using all of the procedural content we talked about in this episode, and spend some time talking about how we created sound effects in our process and provide some examples of the various sound effects in the game, whether it's your thrusters or dying spectacularly. If you like our videos, hit the like button and consider subscribing for more content. And please feel free to leave a comment below.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.